Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
Well, Calvin, I am the man who made a career out of showing the world its own incredible secrets. I am a cartoonist and explorer and the creator of Believe It or Not.
Terrific to have you, Rip. Let's start at the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on February 22nd, 1890, out in the beautiful city of Santa Rosa, California.
What was your given name at birth?
My parents named me Leroy Robert Ripley.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Not a grand one, but I eventually dropped the Leroy altogether when I moved out east to start my newspaper career in New York. Robert just had a better ring to it for a sports cartoonist.
What was your hometown like growing up?
Santa Rosa was a quiet, modest place back then. It was a small town, but it had a vibrant Chinese neighborhood that completely captivated me. I used to wander into that part of town all the time, and it sparked a lifelong love for Chinese culture and art that stayed with me forever.
What was your family life like?
We didn't have much money at all, so we struggled to make ends meet. My mother did sewing jobs to help us get by. When my father passed away, things got even tougher, and I had to step up to help take care of the family.
What kind of kid were you?
I was an awkward, shy misfit, to be honest. I had a severe stammer, a prominent overbite, and crooked teeth, which made me feel very self-conscious. Because of that, I mostly kept to myself and spent hours pouring my heart into drawing.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
Deep down, I feared being an outsider forever because of my speech and appearance. But oddly enough, as I grew older, I developed a massive fear of flying and a fear of the water. Even though I eventually traveled hundreds of thousands of miles and owned a fleet of boats, I never actually learned how to swim.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
I wanted to be an artist. From the moment I could hold a pencil, I wanted to draw the things I saw around me.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I wasn't much for traditional academics, but I loved contributing cartoons to my school newspaper and yearbook. Outside of drawing, I absolutely loved playing baseball.
What was your first job?
My first professional artistic sale was a drawing I sold to Life magazine when I was just 18 for $8. But my first steady gig was working as a sports cartoonist for the San Francisco Bulletin.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
It was probably when I realized that while other kids were fitting in, I was perfectly content wandering alone, looking for unusual things, and sketching the world from my own peculiar angle. My buck teeth and crooked smile made me different, but I learned to embrace my uniqueness.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
It was a cold December day in 1918 at the New York Globe. I was completely out of ideas for my usual sports cartoon. In a bit of a rush, I just compiled a quick collage of various unbelievable sports feats I'd collected over the years, like a man holding his breath or someone jumping backward. I called it Champs and Chumps. That one lazy day substitute changed the entire trajectory of my life.
What was your biggest break?
After I renamed the cartoon Believe It or Not and began expanding it beyond sports, it caught the attention of the publishing mogul William Randolph Hearst in 1929. He signed me to King Features Syndicate, which put my cartoons into 17 papers worldwide and skyrocketed my career.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Dropping out of high school to support my family was a massive weight. Then, moving to New York with very little money and trying to prove that a self-taught kid from California could make it in the cutthroat newspaper world was an uphill battle.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Oh, there were times when the deadline pressure was immense and the ideas just weren't coming. But drawing and exploring were my lifeblood. I couldn't have quit if I wanted to.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
Research and relentless curating. While I traveled the world, I also relied on my brilliant researcher, Norbert Perlroth, who spent 7 days a week at the New York Public Library digging up foreign journals and obscure facts. My routine was a constant cycle of sketching, reading, and hunting for the bizarre.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
If my arm hadn't been injured, I probably would have tried to stay in semi-professional or professional baseball. I pitched a mean curveball back in the day and even worked out with the New York Giants for a brief moment.
What was your life like before fame?
It was full of hustle. I was just another sports reporter and illustrator, running around New York, meeting athletes, sketching at boxing matches, and living paycheck to paycheck.
How did relationships change after success?
You suddenly find yourself surrounded by a lot of people who want to be near the excitement. I became known for throwing lavish, eccentric parties, but deep down, I still valued the quiet camaraderie of fellow artists and old friends who knew me before the whirlwind.
Did fame bring happiness?
It brought me the freedom to travel to over 200 countries, buy the things I loved, and share the world's wonders with millions. It was an incredibly thrilling ride, and I was deeply grateful for it.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The constant pressure to top yourself. When you are the believe it or not man, people expect you to be shocked or to shock them 24 hours a day. It can be exhausting to always be the curator of the world's marvels.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often thought I was making these things up, but I took great pride in the fact that we thoroughly researched our claims. Another misconception was that I was a fearless adventurer, when in reality, I was terrified of the very planes I had to fly on to get to my destinations.
What was your darkest moment?
Losing my father at a young age was incredibly difficult because it forced me to grow up overnight and leave my formal education behind to provide for my mother and siblings.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I sometimes regretted not being able to finish my schooling, even though the school of life gave me a grand education.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
Some people thought I was just exploiting the unusual, but I truly viewed my work as an appreciation of human diversity and the incredible, beautiful oddities of nature. I saw myself as an amateur anthropologist.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
In 1933, right before the opening of my very first auditorium exhibition at the Chicago World's Fair, a manager got into a fight with one of our star performers, a man with a 78-inch mustache, and accidentally ripped off half of the mustache. It was a total disaster for the exhibit, so we just had to send them both back to India and quickly pivot to our other amazing performers, like the man who could rotate his head 270 degrees.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
Immensely. I went from a poor boy in handmade clothes to earning over $500,000 a year during the Great Depression. I was able to buy a 28-room mansion on my own private island in New York, which I named Bion Island.
What personal battles were you fighting privately?
I always wrestled with a bit of that childhood insecurity. Even when I had dental surgery later in life, I told the dentist not to straighten my buck teeth too much because they had become my trademark. But the self-consciousness about my looks never fully went away.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My mother, who worked so hard to keep us together, and the early sports writers and editors who saw potential in a shy kid's sketches and told me to keep pushing forward.
What was life like in your final years?
I was as busy as ever, transitioning my work into the brand new medium of television. I was filming weekly shows, surrounded by my collections of ancient artifacts, shrunken heads, and Chinese art.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was focused on my new television premiere series for Believe It or Not in 1949, bringing the oddities alive on the screen for the first time.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I suffered a heart attack right after a television broadcast and passed away on May 27, 1949, in New York City. I was 59 years old.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
In 1929, I published a cartoon pointing out that the United States didn't actually have an official national anthem, as the Star-Spangled Banner was just an old melody we used without a law. It caused such a massive uproar that millions of people signed a petition, and Congress finally officially corporate signed it into law in 1931.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
People used to say that the Looney Tunes character Egghead, who later became Elmer Fudd, was entirely based on me because of the buck teeth, the accent, and a parody sketch they did called Believe It or Else.
What was your most unique habit?
I loved to work while wearing exotic robes, and I filled my home with unusual pets, including a 28-foot boa constrictor named Gertie.
What was your favorite food?
I loved authentic traditional Chinese cuisine, which I fell in love with during my travels in my childhood days in California.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
I frequented the authentic noodle shops and traditional dining spots in New York's Chinatown whenever I wasn't traveling abroad.
What was your favorite book?
I was deeply fond of travelogues and historical accounts of early explorers, particularly the journeys of Marco Polo.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Not many personal rivalries, but I had a constant, friendly competition with the fiction writers of the world, because I wanted to prove that reality was always much stranger than anything they could make up.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
Once, I received a package in the mail containing an actual shrunken head from Ecuador. The note attached simply read, "Please take care of this. I think it is one of my relatives." I kept it in my collection.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
During a live radio broadcast from the bottom of the Grand Canyon, my river guide couldn't steer the boat and handle the shortwave radio equipment at the same time. So we had to recruit a young local amateur radio operator named Barry Goldwater to help us get the broadcast on the air.
Did you ever prank someone?
I love to surprise my house guests on Bion Island by showcasing my bizarre artifacts, or having my massive pet boa constrictor make a sudden appearance during dinner.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
Aside from my private island, I bought a massive, authentic Chinese junk boat named the Monlay, which I loved to sail around New York, even though, as I mentioned, I couldn't swim a stroke.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Never stop being curious about the world around you. And don't be afraid to lean into the things that make you different. The very things that make you an oddity might just be your ticket to greatness.
Rip, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
Just that the world is absolutely full of wonders if you take the time to look past the ordinary. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Calvin. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us, Robert Ripley. We went from a slow sports news day in 1918 to a global empire of the weird and wonderful, highlighting how a shy kid from Santa Rosa changed how we look at history and human feats. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.